Hi everyone, my name's Michael Hirsch. I teach strategy at the University of Washington and I help build AI confidence in product teams. Welcome back. This is now video 6 of this series where we're going through the 6 personas of product leadership and looking at how AI can help in each of these. So today we are going to look at the business and portfolio choreographer. This role, this persona for a product leader is all about taking a holistic end-to-end view of the product portfolio, making sure that you're optimizing resources and focused ultimately on those business outcomes. This is always a little bit of a balance between short-term and long-term. What's got to get done this sprint? What's got to get done this quarter? What are you trying to accomplish over the course of the next 2, 3, 4 quarters? And so for this demo and the scenario I want to talk about, we're going to jump into something all product managers deal with, technical debt. So a few months ago, I was working with a product team and they were struggling with this whole idea of technical debt, but really with prioritizing it, right? The engineering team was really pushing to get a lot of the technical debt dealt with, resolved. But of course they had some business metrics and customer requests and all those kinds of things. So I worked with them and I got them to start looking at and thinking of technical debt, not so much as a liability, but to try to flip the script and think of that technical debt in a way to make it a strategic asset. And that's a classic business strategy power move. Take a liability, flip it into an asset. So while your competitors do what most companies do, you address technical debt to sort of just stay in front of any issues and appease engineering teams, right? You can also approach it really systematically and approach it focusing on business value. So I'm going to do 3 prompts. Let me actually go to those. So I'm going to start with a sample technical debt list, right? So this is kind of a simple list of technical debt that this fictional product management team is dealing with. Database query optimization, legacy authentication system refactor, API response time improvements, code documentation updates, security vulnerability patches, mobile app performance optimization, and third-party integration cleanup. And then sort of an estimate of how long to deal with each of those. And we're going to go through 3 prompts. We're going to first do a strategic classification. So I'm going to ask AI to not look at these as technical debt, but to look at these as what element of our strategy can they help support. And then we're going to go and just do a kind of a classical, okay, give me the business impact. So I can try to score these and prioritize these. And then finally, once we have that, I'm going to ask AI to help me make some resource allocation recommendations. I ultimately will make the decisions, but I'm going to have AI give me some recommendations. So let's go ahead and start with this first prompt on the strategic classification. And I want to make sure I include our list. So let me read this prompt. Analyze this technical debt list as a portfolio strategist, not an engineer. For each item, classify it into one of 4 strategic categories: competitive moats, risk mitigation, efficiency multiplier, or a perfectionist project. For each classification, explain the reasoning and potential business consequences of action versus inaction. Okay, so let's let it go. Giving a structure of how we want this response to look at this list is going to really help us start to move from sort of a flat list of just technical debt desires or solutions to a little bit more of a strategic way of looking at it from a business. So competitive moats, mobile app performance optimization. Okay, good. Risk mitigation, security vulnerability, and legacy authentication system refactor. Efficiency multipliers, that's where we put in the database query, the API response time, and the third-party integration cleanup. And finally, code documentation, categorized as a perfectionist project. Now, recognize that I didn't give AI any details other than that list. So I would typically want to provide maybe some additional details, maybe point to actual tickets or things like that. So it had more details to sort of do this analysis. But even if I didn't, I could go through this and I could, have a little bit of a back and forth with the AI to tune this if it's categorizing things in ways that I don't necessarily agree with. And it's already giving us a prioritization sequence: security patches, database optimization, API improve, and it goes on from there. So let's do the second prompt, which is saying, okay, great. Now I want to score these on 3 business dimensions. So now score the technical debt items on 3 business dimensions on a 1 to 10 scale: strategic value, risk exposure, and velocity multiplier. And then create a prioritization matrix that balances immediate business needs with long-term strategic positioning. Okay, so I've got now a framework that I'm putting against this, some sort of measurable way of comparing these to see where they end up. So we have the strategic value, the risk exposure, the velocity multiplier, and then a weighted score. And then it's giving us some reasoning. Maximum risk exposure overrides modest strategic value. 12-month delay risks regulatory penalties. Breach costs. So it's basically looking at these security vulnerabilities as mission critical and the first thing that needs to be addressed. And then it's looking at mobile performance and database optimization, both coming in tied right now at the scoring, authentication refactor, and so forth. So recommended prioritization: immediately deal with security patches and mobile performance. Next quarter, look at these, and then put in the backlog for phase 3. What it hasn't really done, though, is it's focusing on mitigating risk and competitive advantages, right? So it's looking at this from the business perspective, but I haven't asked it yet, and I will now, to deal with the resource constraints, right? So given, let's give it this prompt, which I'll read as well. Given 12 weeks of available engineering capacity. So that's kind of a constraint. I'm saying, you know what? I'm going to give you 12 weeks, right? We're not going to do everything. Let's start with the first period of time for which 12 weeks of technical debt work will be allocated. Recommend an optimal allocation strategy that does a few things: eliminates critical strategic vulnerabilities, invests in competitive differentiation, maximizes compound business value, provides clear justification for what we don't fix. Frame these recommendations for stakeholder communication. What do I tell the engineering team about deprioritized items? What do I tell executives about our strategic technical investments? So I've introduced a little bit of business prioritization here. So let's ask it to do it. And with that, it's saying, you know what? Okay, deal with security vulnerability, then go to the API response time, right? So it moved that ahead of mobile app because the mobile app is kind of a longer period of time. And then database query, and then the mobile app performance. This allocation eliminates existential risk, builds compound velocity, and creates competitive moat. So it's kind of hitting all of the important categories while maintaining realistic delivery timelines. The sequencing creates cascading business value. Here's what's been deprioritized or deferred, and some communication for engineering. This requires dedicated focus beyond our current sprint capacity. We're shifting to just-in-time documentation practices. Okay, so suggestions of how I might want to communicate this in a way that engineering will both understand and respect, and hopefully agree with. And then how are we going to communicate it to our executive stakeholders? And then some risk management for items that we're deferring. So in just a couple of minutes, I went from a list of technical debt, right, which is a constant. We're always dealing with it. Every product manager has to wrestle with it and try to figure out, what do I prioritize? And it's usually a matter of which engineer is screaming the loudest or which customer is most impacted by a technical debt issue. And approach it not from I'm trying to prioritize the best I can and then get all the other important stuff squeezed in, but from a business perspective, looking at this from a strategic perspective. How can I actually focus on the pieces of technical debt that are going to have the biggest impact on my business so that I don't waste time necessarily focusing on the pieces that won't? All right. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed that. Again, my name is Michael Hirsch. I teach strategy at the University of Washington, and I help build AI confidence in product teams. Have a great day.